Hi and welcome to Poetry Wednesday. What I want to do today is share with you several poems from a couple of other people's collections and also several poems from my collection. Poetry is it can be a tough beast to conceptualize and to get your head around for a lot of people. So if you're one of those people who struggles with poetry, I want to just share with you an excerpt from my first newsletter, which is available on my website, in the blog, and also on my Patreon page, called Dried Ink. And this article that I wrote is called Dead Poets Society. And I think it helps us get our heads around poetry a little bit better. So I'll just read a few paragraphs. Whilst COVID-19 has changed the way we live and work, a lesser-known global pandemic has gripped us for generations. Metrophobia, otherwise known as the fear of poetry, has managed to marginalise the poetic form and cloud the views and opinions of the masses. Many sufferers fear all poetry, while others fear poems that deal with specific subject matter. The ancient Greek orators recited poems at the Olympic Games, yet today poetry has been relegated to the alabaster halls of academia. Art in all its glorious forms is subjective. Poetry and prose are no exceptions. Poetry in particular sends many running to the hills, arms flailing. A poem is its own experience in and of itself, and people understand poems differently. That is the beauty of poetry. What many fail to realise is that poetry transcends metre and verse. There are points of connection in every poem for every reader, a place of greater, richer conversation. And I end by saying this. For many metrophobia sufferers, the best therapy is to strip away the negative thoughts they associate with poetry and recognise the creative freedom that poetry provides to both the creator and the reader. There is no shame in not understanding a poem. Give it your own meaning and enjoy. So if you're one of those people who struggle with poetry, then what I would say is next time you read a poem, maybe just take a moment and then reread it several times further and take your own meaning from this. It's not necessary that you get it per se. A lot of us who write poetry have our own meaning behind it, and we're not really. Some people are, but I'm one of those who write poetry, and I'm not really that interested in my readers fully understanding my own personal meaning. As long as it touches the reader and they take their own meaning out of it, then I feel that I have made some sort of connection through my own creative work. So what I want to do here is share several poems. This is the first poem I'm going to be reading is from the Forward Book of Poetry 2019, and it's a poem from Judith Wilson. And the poem is called It's Like the First Winter Morning. It's like the first winter morning, when you notice in the traffic that the tails down the valley, 2, 3, bright cars with snow on their roofs, and you can't help looking up to catch a rumour of pines and amber and great bronze bells in a tower, above the 200 steps of a citadel where evening fall winds stir sparks out of dragon-clawed braziers, and an owl's call carries the distance from dark pooling under a forest to first lilac light on the snowfields. Sometimes we think this is how it could be, how we think sometimes that it is. Great first poem for today. The second poem I want to read is from someone whose poetry collection I have just absolutely fallen in love with, and this is Luke Davies with a poem out of his Totem collection called Brim. It snows in Oberon, way away, and she is in your life. How pollen drapes like dresses, how light streams through a backyard bruised and swollen with lily pads and love, as if snow were an abstract place where night falls early, as if that hot breath contact with her lips had filled the evening to the brim. The bats attack the figs. Tomorrow we will meet again and swim. I love the free verse poetry that Luke has written, and taken a lot of inspiration from Luke in my own collection. My first poem from my collection is a poem that has been accepted into Poetry New Zealand 2021 yearbook, and this is a triolet, which is a 13th century French poetry form. It's linked to the rondeau, or round poem, and the first line is used 3 times, the second line is used twice. There is a specific rhyming pattern to this, and it may sound easy to write if you're just repeating lines, but I found this to be one of the most difficult forms that I tackled over the course of the last year. This poem is called Floralista. Each nightmare starts the same way, the grinding motion of the train. Wreck me with Kenzo Floralista, pray, each nightmare starts the same way. Stubborn shadow, ghost so close, play 6 degrees too far, impossible to abstain. Each nightmare starts the same way, the grinding motion of the train. And the second poem from my collection, and the final poem for today, so a short session, is a poem called Tears. Again, taken a lot of inspiration taken from Luke's Totem collection here. So this is a free verse poem called Tears. I watch you as you sleep, naked in a hailstorm. My dreams of you bleed out on the floor in hail. The sky contracts. You evaporate like water. Let it come, the pounding rain, sorrow's serenade. Frosted windows diffuse your beauty. I blink, prophecy fulfilled. 1,000 sparks lick awake, ceremonial pyre. Invisible, weightless gift of love dissolves, loneliness squeezed tight. Dark petals grip vermilion, linger a minute. So, some poems from several different poets and different collections. And again, like I said, if you want to digest this further, then possibly rewind and listen to the poems again and take your own meaning from this. You can follow me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/Sebastien Woolf, or on my website darkofdawn.com. You can get me on Facebook at Sebastien Woolf, or on Twitter at Sebastien Woolf. That's Sebastien with an E and Wolf with 2 O's for Sebastien Woolf. Thank you for tuning in. There'll be weekly sessions on poetry on Wednesdays that I'll be loading up as a video blog, and don't forget to tune in if horror and gore is your thing. Then I will be reading excerpts from my Dark of Dawn collection on Fridays, where we do gore and more. So again, a slight tangent, a slight break away from the beauty of poetry to the beauty of post-apocalyptic fiction. Thanks again for tuning in, and I wish you the most successful week you've ever had, given that 2020 has been the single most challenging year that we've all faced. So I hope that some of the poems that I've shared today have inspired you or warmed you, and you have been able to take something away from those. So I will catch you next time.